Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. Join Stewart, Heath for down-to-earth conversations with top professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders who have a story to tell. Let's get rolling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Stewart Heath, CEO and founder of Harvard Grace Capital. And today we have our guest, Peter McCarthy, who is here from parts unknown. He's formerly of Nashville, but now nobody really knows where he is and where he's working. So we are happy that he has taken time out to work for us here. Just a little joke there, Peter. Thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you.
So let's jump right into it. Peter, when you think back on your career, whether it's long or short or whatever, what would you say was a game changer that brought you to where you are now versus where you thought you might be?
Yeah. So, I would say, we'll start with the young days of, the college student, majored in computer science, was sitting there going, I'm going to go work for the big guys. I'm going to go work for Apple. I'm going to go work for Google. I'm going to go work for any of the big ones, right? Then you start realizing that, and you kind of see that, like, what they get to work on when you're like a junior dev is very much a person on the assembly line, right? You go in, you do what you need to do, you get out. The pay, like you see those paychecks that, and the advertisements, you're like, holy cow, that's a lot of money, right? But I think what really changed it is I decided not to go that route. And I decided to go work for an association, which some people would say, like, that's a little different from like a programmer perspective. But what it really taught me was that technology and development, like software development and everything, is in every field. So half the fun was trying to be like, cool, you can go work for Apple, but like, if you're really like, you find finance really fascinating, right? What if you're the guy who writes the programs and the algorithms that the stockbrokers use on Wall Street, right? Like Bloomberg terminals, you want to go code those, right? And this kind of actually appeared and kind of changed my course of things when I actually interviewed for a company that I didn't take the job for. But they were programming CAT scan machines. And you kind of sit there and you're like, and they're like, yeah, so you'll sit here and you're going to get a phone call and they're going to tell you someone's in it and something's up. So you got to debug it in that time frame to get them out. And I was like, some high stakes, craziness here, right? And it kind of opened up that door of building technology and applications that, you don't always think of, right? Because, half the fun is understanding, like, it's something that, like, I moved with this and and my thought of this is, if you think about it, IBM is a computer powerhouse. But if you go back to like the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, everybody knew who IBM's name was. Now, I walk into a middle school today and ask who IBM is, they can't answer you, but they'll know who Apple is.
Yeah.
Right? But IBM is a backbone of a lot of things. And I think that was kind of the cool concepts of like learning, like building software in all these other like facets of the technology spectrum and, business. That kind of took me down the road that I'm on, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, well, all of us wanted an IBM PC back in the 80s.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, I almost went a fairly heavy tech path when I was in school, but it was pivotal time. I actually learned to program in Fortran and COBOL and Basic 2 and crap like that. I'm sure languages.
So funny thing is, those are actually coming back. That's actually highly sought after. People who understand that are functional programming languages, because there are a lot of legacy systems inside a lot of industries.
So you're saying I might have another career?
You could, but there's a lot of value in understanding those languages and understanding how those work. because they're the building blocks of some of our high level languages that we have today.
Yeah. All my Fortran work was on punch cards. So if that dates me any further, but PCs, where I was going, PCs were just coming out. I think they actually launched it like 1984, 85. I graduated from college in March of 85. And a year later, I had my own PC. And so yeah. And IBM was everywhere. Then there was Compact, and IBM made the strategic decision to get out of equipment business. So
yes,
all the mainframes were IBM's.
Yep,
and stuff like that. So yeah, but somehow they made the decision. They didn't ask me. I didn't necessarily agree with it. There's never an ending need for equipment, but anyway. So that's fascinating. So would you say your game-changing moment was while you were still in college and
I would say it was like that first year out of college, like that.
But you never took the job with the big boys?
I never took the job with a big boy. It's always an idea. I do have some very good friends that work for the big boys. And some of them love it. Some of them hate it. It's the mentality of some people thrive in the corporate structures.
Yeah.
And other people thrive in an entrepreneurial set. And I started realizing I did better in entrepreneurial world. That kind of was something that kind of pulled me more, because I was like, I like doing a lot of things rather than just being like, hey, you work on this.
It's you might not agree, but it's a little bit like accounting, in that you get to see how many, many, many different businesses work.
Yes.
And debits and credits are all the same, but you have to understand how each business works. And I always enjoyed that part too, but I've never worked in a large organization either. And I would probably die if I had to. So,
yeah.
So everybody hits bumps in the road. So you go to work, you're out of college, you go to work for this association. And the older you get, the more bumps you hit. And as I've come to say, sometimes you live for maybe a year or two down in a pothole or something like that. So, is there a bump in the road that you hit that you can share with us, and how you were able to handle it and navigate it?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest bump in the road that I really hit is when I started going to work, when I was working for the association world. In a weird way, I think I spent too long there. And I kind of got to a point where, and I think this is something that is really important when you're in your early days of work, is if you're sitting somewhere and nothing surprises you anymore, and you're not learning anything new, you're just sitting there, just you could do it in your sleep. You could show up there, you could be half asleep, and you can get it all done. It's time to go. It's time to look somewhere else. And I think, there was this mentality of back in the day of people stayed in the same job or the same company for years and climbed. But I would say for the younger generation, job hopping is your greatest strength, and that it's normal now, right? It's okay to be like, yeah, I was there for 2.5 years, but then I just put in a job application because I kind of got, bored of this one. I started looking for a job and something else popped up, right? And then it's something I would say to younger people as well. That's your greatest way to increase your paycheck, is to job hunt. You won't get it staying somewhere, right? It could be the greatest setup in the world, right? But sometimes it's you got to feel the uncomfortable to grow, right? And I was sitting in that position at the association, just able to do what I needed to do. Nothing was surprising me anymore. In a weird way, I got extremely bored. I was building software that I didn't sit there and really problem solve it. They'd be like, hey, we need this. And you'd be like, all right, let me go write that. because I knew how the system worked. I knew how to integrate it. I knew all that kind of stuff. I knew how that API worked. I knew the intricacies in and out, which so many people would say is, comfort and knowledge, right? But I wasn't growing. I was stagnant. And it took me a while, because this was right post-COVID, right? It took me a while to find something else. And that's when I found Kevin, Lee, and Recovery Club, and kind of got the opportunity to be like, all right, you want to go build something new. And that was probably the best thing that happened. It was, I would say some people say it's a risk, right? But it's something that you have to look at when you're younger. And I feel like that was probably the biggest rut, was understanding and learning that I had to constantly keep on learning and like doing the same thing over and over again with that comfort was like preventing me from growing and learning. And as you said, like business, like understanding the businesses and how different businesses aspect, I knew how that business ran in the back of my hand from my side of things, right? Well, let's go learn what something else does, right? And when we stay in those certain ways, we get stuck in those like thought processes. And then going somewhere else or starting something different, it changes your opinions and it changes how you understand things. It's how you look at everything. Yeah, so I think that would be the biggest thing. And it kind of jump-started a lot of things for me, a lot of growth at that time. So it was kind of like, and it wasn't just growth, professionally, it was growth like across the board,
right,
as a person. So I would say that was the biggest rut. It's just sitting there and just, in a weird way, you were just bored.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there and you're like, I always say is you always look at that one kid in elementary school or the teacher's like, that kid's not paying attention. It's like 99% of the time that kid's bored. If you ask him, he can answer it.
Yeah.
He's just bored. So he's going to start doing other things because he's looking for entertainment.
Like they thought Einstein was an idiot because he did poorly in school, wasn't paying attention, and dropped out at 8th grade. Well, because such an idiot.
And people like saying that and understanding. Like I had a good friend that was a computer science major in college, and he was kind of like, we were kind of told by our professor at the time that like, you're not really destined for, the PhD world. This guy ended up getting a PhD in spatial computing from Clemson University and is currently one of the lead software engineers on spatial computing at Apple.
Oh, cool.
Like he's way out there. Like his ability to understand that side of stuff's unreal. So I always say that too is, even though someone tells you one thing or the other, you can still go for it.
For sure. Yeah. But I would have said my first reaction to that was, well, thank you. I have no desire to be in academia, which is what PhDs are for.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not in your world.
It is to an extent. Computer science is weird. It's I would say a constantly changing field. Because there's a lot of difference of opinion. Maybe a lot of like the thought process of how you're supposed to go about your careers.
So, Peter, I see that you're a distinguished alumnus of Sewanee, the University of the South.
Yes.
Which is about an hour from where I am right now. So,
yes.
How do you tackle staying current and learning new things?
Oof. Honestly, this is like learning the new things is really, I kind of see what, new products or what the thought processes are coming out of, specific, I would say, the big boy developer conferences, especially in the technology sector. A lot of people don't realize is like Apple's big developer conference that happens in June called WWDC. Lots of people watch it for the new product releases and all that kind of stuff. software developers like myself who have to deal with iOS apps, that's our rule book that gets released every year.
Right.
So we sit there and we're like, all right, so what are we going to have to completely change? Or what are we about to do? Or what are they going to announce that we have to integrate with?
What do you have to go fix? Because somebody at Apple decided to change their mind. Yeah.
Exactly. So I try to keep up with that as much as I possibly can. And then, there's a couple, kind of websites that keep up on that kind of stuff. And you can kind of see like what people are building with and what like the big like thing is. Like the one that always pops up is you always hear people, and this is very tech for the people that are listening that is tech world, right? There's a new version or a new library of JavaScript every like 2 years that everyone says is revolutionary. It's the same thing. It's just, did we sign it? Like, did we put the hierarchy or something through it differently, right? So a lot of times it's me just like going in there and seeing like, so what did you do differently here? Like, what value do you have there? I think that's the big thing. I think the biggest thing for like technology and trying to keep up is constantly like building. And even if it's just you just messing around, right? Like just tinkering with your own like little like projects that you just like have for fun, or you do a tutorial and then you see like what you can do with it. I think that's what's benefited me the most, is like kind of keeping up with that and just kind of like having my own, tinkerings, right? Because if you want to go back to like computer science if you look at computer science from a like academic standpoint, when you come out of college, right? It's only the building blocks and the understanding of the concepts of computer science. So we like to refer to it like when I, hire new grads, we like to say there's academic computer science and there's real world computer science. Those are two different worlds. You can say that for
any field
exactly
study in the world. So yeah,
exactly. So we like to put that in comparison because someone will be like, well, this is how it's supposed to be. Right. And we go, yeah, theoretically, but that's not how it's going to work. Right. So yeah, honestly, I think it's a lot of taking those core ideas and putting that understanding into the newest ways of interacting with it. That's why some people will be like, computer science curriculums haven't changed. They shouldn't, because they're teaching you what you need to understand. Yeah. Then you got to take that and apply it to the product that you're building. They're not going to tell you, oh, this is how you build a web application. No, they taught you how a web application works.
Probably because they don't know. But I guess.
Yeah, but like but you learn the concepts and the skill set to get you there, right? I think that's the key thing, is constantly like building. You're constantly problem solving. You're constantly trying to figure out things. And the number one thing that I always say, and you hear it amongst of sports and like athletes and all that, you learn more on a day of failure than you do on a day of accomplishment, right? There are many days that I'm sitting here and I'm coding stuff and I'm like, why? That makes no sense. Why? But then you start realizing, oh, okay, well, that's a cool concept, right? And then I think what's cool about computer science is there's this constant like building on top of each other. Like would I build, like how I built something when I was at an association, would I build it the same, like if I was building the same thing, would I do it the same way today? No. Because I feel like I've learned a lot. And I'd be like, okay, I should do it this way. I should do it that way. Yeah, those are the constantly learning, constantly reading. And don't have a fear for change. I think that's another one. Okay. Don't have a big fear for change.
All right, let's pivot over to the world of personal finance and investing and stuff. So with your investable cash, are you a stuff the mattress guy, or are you a crypto guy, or are you buying art, or what do you do with your investable cash?
So a lot of it's invested in stock. is mostly of where it goes. Mutual funds,
All Apple.
funds.
You're all in on it.
I'm not. I do own part of it. I do have some of it in there.
It's hard to own a mutual fund that doesn't own Apple.
That's true. That's true. That's true. And then, I own some stuff like individually, like outright. Just independent shares, not part of anything. So that's where pretty much all of it goes right now.
No crypto?
Yeah, I'm not totally sold on it yet.
I don't understand it. So
I think there's a lot of parts of it that in some instances there is like the deregulation was like what like made it cool. But then it kind of needs it at the same time because you can't have the Wild West. And then you just open up a can of worms, with a bunch of that stuff. So it's not something that I've personally, invested myself, but I'm not saying that, back in 2021, like crypto.coms, like learn how blockchain works and working with MetaMask and digital wallets. I programmed in it, right? Like I wanted to understand what it was, if that makes sense. So yeah, I kind of went down that road. I didn't go the investor route. I went what is this? Right. And then, like I had known about blockchain. It's a data structure in computer science. And in a weird way, I started looking at what other ways what industries are not using blockchain? Because financial industry has been using it for years. The big banks have been using blockchain for decades. Crypto just made it. I would say that data structure, public knowledge.
Made it sexy.
Yeah. So yeah, I started going down that road of just wanting to like understand how it worked inside that data structure. Yeah.
Well, you may disagree. I think blockchain's going to change the world, and it's going to, I'm sure it already is. I know a lot of people have been using, but it's going to take over like government record databases, register of deeds stuff, private securities and things of that nature, and will actually provide liquidity to a lot of different illiquid type investments and holdings today.
Yeah,
because it'll be available to be traded fairly easily. So, yeah, kind of cool stuff. But I still don't understand it. Really, I do think I understand blockchain, but I don't understand crypto. That it's valuable just because you say it is. I mean, well,
yeah.
We all kind of do that with currencies, but
there's a little more backing to those sometimes.
Yeah, a little bit. A few thousand more years of acceptance and tradition there, and so. But I'm sure we all know people who've made a lot of money in crypto, and I wish I'd had some a week and a half ago. On election day, and I would have sold it by Friday, but I didn't. So,
yep.
All right, last question. Coming to the end of our time here, Peter. If you were mentoring somebody, or if you had one piece of advice for anybody who'd want to follow in your footsteps, what would it be?
Oh, the number one advice. I guess it goes back to kind of the start of the conversation is never limit yourself. Like on what industry or stuff from a technology standpoint. Even if you don't know much about it. Like I didn't really know that much about the mental health care world, right? But you get to learn that while you code. Yeah. And that's like, I think that's a ton of fun, and it like grows your knowledge in somewhere that you wouldn't expect to really learn. So yeah, that's what I would say is don't limit yourself. The big boys are always going to be the big boys. Not if you get an offer, go. Like, that's awesome. Go have a great time. But don't rule out smaller or industries that you may not realize, have some insane programmers. Financial industry really does. Those guys are really good. So I would definitely, say that. Just keep your door open. Don't limit yourself, and build as much as you can. Just have fun with it. You're gonna have good days. You're gonna have bad days.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. Peter, if any of our viewers would want to contact you, how would they go about doing that?
Best way is to just email me at pmccarthy@recoveryclubamerica.com.
Okay. We'll put that in the show notes, so anybody wants to reach out to you, they'll be able to do that easily. And thanks again for taking your time to be with us. And thank you to the viewers for watching this episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. I'm Stewart Heath, your host, and please come back and watch our next episode. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. If you'd like to be a guest, visit growthgraceprosperity.com/guest. We'd love to hear your story.